Means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet. It is Saturday, and oftentimes we don't have a live stream on Saturdays, but we had to have one today because I missed you so for the lacking, I was going to say tardiness, but no, there was no tardiness yesterday. There was no live yesterday. I was unable to make it. The day got away from me, and by the time it was about 7 o'clock when I was going to sit down, my brain stopped functioning yesterday, and it was going to be better for us to postpone it a short 12 hours or so until today, right now, a little longer than that. And that means that we can really focus with our full frontal cortexes and rear cortexes and all of the other cortexes. But happy Saturday, everybody. Hope your weekend is off to an amazing start. As you know, my name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group. We're a criminal defense law firm in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we've been covering the January 6th saga, Insurrection Day, basically the end of America, almost the end of our lives, in detail. Ever since they started beating this horse dead into the ground, since January 6th, really, we were live that day and been following it ever since. And last week, we spent, unfortunately, 2 hours of our lives that we'll never get back talking and listening to the January 6th insurrection hearing. And so today, we're going to have to unpack that. And in order to do so, we have to go to our mind map. Now, I know this looks like a lot. We're going to unpack what is happening here. But this is the January 6th mind map. And today we're going to focus on the stuff here in green. Recall that we spent a lot of time focused on what happens at the hearings. And so the first part of the show is going to be debriefing really what took place on Thursday, which was the insurrection hearing, episode 1, the season premiere. And there was a lot of droning, a lot of on and on talking. I mean, they were reading from the teleprompters the whole time. We covered it live. I was jumping out of my seat. I was pretty riled up on that show. And we started the show here earlier in the chat. I forgot who said it here. A Be Reborn Arts and Healing is here. Says, I'm glad you're back here today with a recap. I've never seen you so worked up in a video before. I trust your information and your perspective. And it's true. On Thursday, man, I was hot. I was fired up because this irritates me. This is sort of part of why I became a defense attorney. Part of my calling in this world is to not let bullies take advantage of other people and sort of use the levers of government in order to further their nefarious ends. In my opinion, they're nefarious. And I was just riled up. And so I appreciate you tolerating that with me. I'm sure many of you at home were riled up. But the point of the show today is we've got to debrief it now that we've had some time to process. A lot of the intoxicants are out of our system. Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney have been out of our brains for the last 48 hours. And so we're able to think a little bit more clearly now and piece together what really happened and what it all means. So you see here, we've got a lot to attend to. Of course, we're going to go through some of the witnesses, Donald Trump's tweet. There was a little bit of misinformation or disinformation about his tweet. Liz Cheney came out and sort of read it out of context. Ivanka Trump was a highlight there. Bill Barr was a highlight. And I found an old video from Bill Barr. And so it's weird to watch Bill Barr do sort of pre-Bill Barr when he was actually really concerned about election stuff, and then post-Bill Barr where we learned that he's really not concerned about it at all. Something happened. I don't know what happened. Weird. Meghan McCain is going to give us her reaction. Scott Perry's going to give us his reaction for allegedly prompting Donald Trump to pardon him for the insurrection. And we've got some rough numbers on the viewing. Viewing numbers are out, and they're not really that great. And that's good news because, well, I don't know. I mean, it's whatever news it is, I guess. It's not good news for the Democrats. I'd say it's good news for the people who are not interested in show trials like this. That's good news for America largely, but we'll take a look at those numbers. Now, we also have the outline. You can see we've got episodes 2 through 6 that are fleshed out. And so if you're, one of those kids, one of those students in class that like to read ahead, well, this is what we've got coming forward. You're going to see, we'll break down the whole agenda because we've got 3 hearings next week. And then we don't know when episodes 5 and episodes number 6 are going to come out, but we'll get those down as well. So let's see what, Mark Owens. Mark Owens just became a member for 4 months. Shout out to Mark Owens, who's a member over on YouTube for 4 months. Thank you. Welcome, Mark. And, or thank you for continuing to be here, Mark. It's not a welcome. It's good. Thank you, Mark, for being a member for 4 months. Super cool. All right. So that's going to be the first part. Before we dive into it, let me outline what else we're talking about today, because recall that a big part of what's happening in this January 6th saga is criminal prosecutions for political opponents of the Democrats, or I would say political allies, more specifically, of Donald Trump. And here you can see we've got two updates, and these are pretty, interesting updates, actually. Steve Bannon is being charged with contempt of Congress. The January 6th committee sent him a subpoena, and he said, "Get bent, I'm not showing up." And so they prosecuted him for a crime. It's called contempt of Congress. And if you recall, we had talked previously about Kevin McCarthy. He is a GOP leader, and he submitted an amicus. Okay, he's not somebody who's been charged with a crime yet. He's gotten a subpoena, so he has sort of a similar interest to Steve Bannon. But he submitted a document that's a really good document. It's making a lot of the same arguments that we've made here, more specifically about the fact that the January 6th committee is illegally constituted, that it's not something that is lawfully, in my opinion, formulated, and it can't be allowed to exist. So he made that argument. And then we saw last week, Steve Bannon, his defense team, and these are former Trump lawyers. I mean, the defense team, you remember this guy, David Scone, somebody who showed up a lot in the insurrection impeachment proceedings. And so he filed this, it's defendant's notice regarding the amicus. So they're responding to Kevin McCarthy's amicus, and it's actually good, right? It's saying, hey, we're going to basically join that. Those are really good arguments. We like those arguments, and we'll let those stand on their merit. So we'll take a look at that. And then finally, Peter Navarro. We've got a Peter Navarro update. A lot of activity in the court docket, and it's not really good. Somebody really needs to get Peter Navarro a lawyer. Somebody's got to find him an attorney because he needs one pretty badly. We've got some updates here. We'll read through these, but you can see 2-minute orders came out from the judge, and the judges basically tell him, brother, you have to stop acting the way that you're acting. You better get a lawyer, or else there may be some additional problems because, in criminal law, Peter Navarro, I'm sure is not somebody very familiar with criminal law or how this all works, but they're not joking when they say anything you say can and will be used against you. And there's very specific rules about communicating with opposing counsel, prosecutors. And if you don't follow the rules, there may be sanctions and you may be scolded by the judge. And it's just not good. So Peter Navarro definitely needs a lawyer. Going to break down what's happening there. Hopefully somebody from the Trump team or the Bannon team or somebody, for the love of, loan the man $100,000 and get him a lawyer or something. Jeez. All right. So lot of big updates to attend to. Just Cause is here. Vienticus Prime is here holding down the fort. George Klaus is in the house. Stace on the case. Digger Dog is here. Jason Kincaid. Simple Jack is over there. On locals, we've got Bonnie Specs in the house. Radicy. JC the Music Man. TOS Forever are all there. TOS Forever saying it was raining there in West Virginia. But here in Arizona, we have the heat dome. It's about 114, I think, supposed to be today. It's quite hot. And it's very domey. So that's going to be something we have to contend with over the next couple days, but we're used to it. It's a dry heat, as they say. Okay, so if you recall, we left off on the show on Thursday, pretty much hungover and not really sure where we were, kind of a lot of stars and dizzy from all of the January 6th, episode 1, Insurrection, whatever that was, right? There was a lot there. And I want to start off by maybe let's start with Meghan McCain. Let's see what her take was on this. Meghan McCain, somebody formerly from The View, and her politics. I mean, everybody knows Meghan McCain's politics because she's sort of straddling a number of different worlds and sort of trying to, I think, be pseudo John McCain and sort of mavericky. And she was on The View and all of this. And she claims to be sort of a Republican, but she's also somebody who's kind of very liberal on a lot of things. And she's also very anti-Trump. So she's almost in that key demographic, isn't it? She's sort of in that key, like the Democrats all think that J6 was the end of the world, right? It was the end of America. That guy took the podium. You see him in the middle of the mind map. That basically meant that democracy throughout the universe was about to come to an end. And they're not trying to convince them. Okay. They're all bought in. They're speaking to the audience. They're preaching to the choir, in other words. So the big goal of the J6 committee was to enlist or to convert people over to their way of thinking. Okay, many people on the far right, let's say, to use their terminology, people might think that the whole thing was just like a trash can fell over. Okay, if you put them in a big spectrum, one on the far left is going to be exactly what Joe Biden said. Joe Biden said this was the worst thing that has ever happened since the Civil War. Got a clip of that. It's in the mind map. I'm not going to pull it up right now. Worst thing ever since the Civil War. Forgot about Pearl Harbor, forgot about 9/11, and so on. You've got other people on the other side of the aisle who think that this was like a trash can got blown over in a strong breeze, right? Which it's probably not quite that either, right? It's probably not on that spectrum either, right? There was some pretty, gross things that happened on that day, but we have mechanisms to deal with those, like a Justice Department and an FBI department that prosecutes people for crimes. And guess what? That's all happening. So we don't need big, gigantic fake show trials in order to dispose of this issue. I've been saying, just let the system deal with it. The people have been charged with violent assault. Let them be charged with it. Let's not make the DOJ politicize the whole thing. Stop putting people in solitary confinement. Give people due process. Make the disclosure. All of those things. But we don't need, in addition to those things being violated, another additional layer of tyrannical governance in the form of a select committee. So my point on this is that we've got this spectrum. Worst thing since the Civil War. It's just a breeze that flew over. You've got some people in this middle column who are probably going to be closer to the right, who are in this category that are saying, well, you know what? It was pretty bad. Maybe it's over dramatized, but maybe not. It was pretty bad, but I'm pretty irritated about inflation and about World War III and about immigration and about the collapsing economy and all these things. So the purpose of the J6 hearing is to convince these people to flip over here. It's to turn them over from these sort of squishy borderline, I don't really know where I stand, into hard-fought Democrats. They've got to bring them over here. And that's because they know that people who are, this is just a trash can that blew over in the breeze, those people are not going to flip. They're not coming over. So they're just a foregone conclusion. And this is what, these are the, independents. This is the middle of America that the politicians kill themselves over every single election. So Meghan McCain presumably is somebody who can give us some insight on the effectiveness of this whole charade. And she did. Let's see what some of her headlines say. Here she says, Meghan McCain, the highly produced yet stunningly boring J6 committee hearing gave me more reason to fear the Capitol riot may become a tragic milestone in America's decline instead of a footnote in our history. And you say, what? She was bored? I was thinking that she hates Donald Trump. Hates him because of John McCain and Donald Trump. She loathes the guy, right? And she has never made that even hidden at all. And so the idea that she's sort of bored on this thing, it's like, what? Meghan's bored? I think she wrote the full article in the Daily Mail. Yeah, let's see. Did my highlights copy over? Yeah, she says, look, I believe every single person involved in the criminal activity should face the full weight of the law, but also says, I believe it's critical to get to the root of extremism and blah, blah, blah. But Thursday's night's event, however, did not advance any of the goals. In fact, it was highly produced, yet stunningly boring. It may make matters even worse in this country, which is exactly the point that I was making, right? I said, look, J6, yes, it was not the greatest day, right? Not a good day in America. Okay, sure. That's understood, acknowledged, conceded, points been made. But the response to it, the response by the government and creating fake committees, prosecuting political enemies, subpoenaing every single Republican, castigating an entire political party, forming select committees to basically create an extrajudicial branch of government with executive function, way worse than anything that took place on January 6th. Way, way worse. That was like 6 hours of difficult days. And, some people got injured. Some people are dead. It was, the whole thing capitalized for political ends. But the response to it that's been beating America into the ground for the last, going to be 2 years now, by the time this committee is either disbanded or commandeered by the Republicans, they'll take over the House. It's going to be Kevin McCarthy's committee now. It's significantly worse. And I'm shocked that Meghan McCain is acknowledging this. Says little new information was revealed, new testimonies that were shown cut against the mainstream narrative of the riot, cut against the narrative that it was an organized insurrection or coup. Says, in fact, the most compelling aspect of the testimony was insight into the West Wing drama between Trump and his family. Right? And they talk about Bill Barr and Donald Trump and Ivanka. And she gives a little bit of a layout of the land here, but says if they had the smoking gun proof that Trump organized the insurrection, well, then they better release it. Thursday was more a narrative building exercise than it was anything effective. So Meghan McCain, right, just sort of acknowledging this whole thing. Nah, wop, wop, wop. And it's a little bit of a surprise to me because she's sort of that ideal person who would be sort of positioned to flip on this, I would think. I'm not so sure. So here we have some more reaction and response. Now, recall that we heard from these two witnesses, and we're going to take a look at what the other witnesses look like for the forthcoming hearings. But the two that we heard from were these two people, Nick Quested, which wasn't really that, effective, in my opinion, all that much. We know he was a filmographer or documentarian or whatever, and he was hanging out with the Proud Boys, filming a bunch of stuff. And they brought him out, and they said, yeah, you were with the Proud Boys, right? And they played some footage that he was with the Proud Boys, and apparently it was all new. Meghan McCain didn't see anything new. I didn't see anything new. Don't know if you saw anything new. I saw the same Capitol with the same protests and the same violence. Okay. So he came out, didn't really think he was that effective, and I sort of thought that the credibility of all of the Proud Boys testimony has been just shattered by the fact that Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys, has been known to have been an FBI informant. We've learned that from Reuters. Have this photograph here. Exclusive Proud Boys leader, prolific informer for law enforcement. And that came from a transcript from a 2014 federal court document. Okay, Reuters got the document. It's in a federal court transcript somewhere. If you have it, I'd love to get it. But this is what they're reporting. Enrique Tarrio, federal informant. Strangely, Enrique Tarrio was not even there on January 6th. Okay, he had left the premises. If you read the full indictment, he was actually in Maryland because he had gotten arrested the day before, ordered by a judge to leave. So basically what this means to me is that every single time we hear Proud Boys, okay, Enrique Tarrio also, by the way, according to the indictment, was meeting with Stewart Rhodes in the days leading up to January 6th. Stewart Rhodes has a lot of gray area, also being a federal informant. Stewart Rhodes also friends with Ray Epps. They had marched along during Oath Keepers events here in Arizona, shout out, walking around in Scottsdale and other places. So when I hear this was a Proud Boys conspiracy, what I immediately think federal informants, the whole thing is just feds, because the leader of the organization has a history of being a Fed. So you might call me crazy for that, but if I'm a defense lawyer and I happen to be, that's the thing that I'm screaming from the rooftops in front of jurors or in any of these charges. Fed, 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 Fed. That's the theme of the trial. Now, here, we also know that Nick Quested also told us that he made a post on Instagram some time ago saying specifically that when he was there, and he sort of testified to some of this, saying that there was only, one officer who was up on the balcony, but he had posted previously online, someone in authority left the door open at the Capitol building, which has been corroborated by many other people, but this is not something that can be brought up in this proceeding because you don't get the opportunity to cross-examine anybody, right? This is like a big lecture. It's like a pep rally. It's like the J6 Avengers, store brand Avengers team getting together, smashing their rings together, doing a pep rally in front of a high school team, and nobody gets to ask him any questions about it. So it's just a big, well, I'll leave it at that. That was witness number one. Not a whole lot interesting came from him. We also heard from Officer Carolyn Edwards. Now, I got a little bit carried away with Carolyn Edwards, or maybe it's Caroline, I don't know. Officer Edwards, who was a Capitol Hill police officer. And, I was thinking about it that night after I got off the show. I don't have any bones to pick, honestly, with any of these people. I don't have any bones to pick with Officer Edwards. She's an officer there. She's, in the middle of a crisis. And so she's going to come out and obviously be very emotional. And she's going to be, they all dramatize the events. Now, a lot of my criticism, about her was largely that, look, the theatrics, the dramatization of all of this, like that's part of the reason they're here. Okay. The select committee brings in people. They say, oh, perfect. This looks like a nice young woman. Like, look at her. Do you think that there's a reason maybe they brought her in, right? She looks a certain way, playing a certain role, is part of the narrative. Right? And I know, it may seem cynical or whatever. Like there are people out there, Rob, they would never do that. They don't look at her looks and her blonde hair and how she looks and Pretty Woman and no, right? It's all part of the narrative. So they drag her in here and they say, what are you going to say? Are you going to say something like slipped in blood, which she did? And there's not going to be anybody out there to cross-examine her about that and to say, really, where'd that blood come from? Where was that blood? Pools of blood? Where was the blood at? Was somebody shot? Did somebody have a limb cut off? Was somebody stabbed? Where did it come from? Were they bleeding from their noses, their ears, their mouth? Where was it all? Because you slipped in it. I mean, it must have been a lot. And then we have a video of hers that we'll take a look at here as well. But very dramatized, okay? And I understand that because this is a political hearing and I get it. And, I was a little bit hard on her because, I think people should be prepared to do their jobs and not make it a gigantic, dramatization, in other words. Okay, let me give you a compare and contrast example. Remember the airline pilot who landed the airplane in the Hudson, okay, and saved like 300 lives. They were like begging this guy for like a press conference and everything. He came out and he said like 2 words or like a sentence. I was very fortunate to land the plane. Thanks for being here. Have a great day. And he left. He like turned around and left. Right? He didn't want the 15 minutes. He didn't want any of it. He just got out. Yep. Thank you. This is what I did. I was put in a bad position. I did my job because that's what I was there to do. Versus, other people who sort of will sugarcoat it a little bit, add some icing on there and put some cherries on top and all of that. And look, I know this wasn't part of like the regular day. I know the Capitol Hill police officers, like regularly, the biggest thing they have to do with is somebody like dropping a Snickers bar somewhere, probably, on the grounds of the Capitol. You pick that up. Oh, sorry. Or sorry about that. I'm here from Wisconsin. I didn't know, or whatever, not to say that people from Wisconsin are litter bugs or anything like that, but it's just like, okay, this is not something that happens regularly. So it was a traumatic experience. No question about that. And I can empathize with that. Anybody thrust into a difficult situation is in a difficult situation. We'll leave it at that. Now, let me also put the hat on the other foot, okay? We can also say that Miss Edwards is a police officer at the Capitol building. She should be highly trained to prepare against, anything that goes on at the Capitol building, given the fact that it is one of the most secure, or should be most secure buildings in the entire world, especially on that day. And what happened here was a riot, and she is a police officer. So it's not like this was World War X, all right? A riot and a police officer. And this also, by the way, wasn't something like an unexpected riot. Okay, Capitol Hill Police, FBI, Sergeant at Arms for both houses should have all been prepared and forewarned about this. In fact, there were letters flying back and forth. We're just going to get into it. And they all should have been prepared. So when she comes out here and starts screaming at the insurrectionary MAGA whatevers, right? Why is she not sort of asking herself, why was the Capitol Hill Police Department not better equipped? Why was the National Guard turned down by Mayor Muriel Bowser? Why was the MPD not properly prepared? And so on and so on and so forth, right? Largely what happened was a failure of any foresight, any leadership, any decision-making from our so-called intelligence people who were supposed to be in charge and rectifying the security of the nation. They all dropped the ball. So she's going to blame, the crowd, and she's free to do that. But the response to that is, you're a police officer at the Capitol building. You knew a protest was coming. And so you had to act like a police officer in the middle of a riot. All right. So spare me with the theatrics, with all of it. But I can't empathize with her, right? It is a difficult situation. It was an emergency, and she's just a police officer, okay? She's being used as a political pawn by the J6ers, by a group of people who are very powerful in this country, who have an axe to grind with an entire political opponent. And so she's just an innocent, collateral damage, as somebody who's just shoved in front of the spotlights just like anybody else. So I really don't have any particular qualms with her or really any of these witnesses, but she comes out and she delivers a story, and the story serves their purposes. And so we can, of course, dissect it, a little bit here. Now, from Miss Edwards, she said this in her testimony. And so this is 36 seconds. I want to do a little call and response to this. So let's see what she said. And I think we have the longer version of the video. So let's watch.
Happened. I want to start, Officer Edwards, with a short clip that shows the horrible moment when you were injured as the peace circle was breached.
All right, so watch this. Now we watch this. They're gonna clip this. They're gonna cut this. They're gonna zoom it in, and then we're gonna watch the full video. Okay, so this is it, and I think you're gonna see. Well, I think this is her. Okay, this is who we're talking about. This officer right here in the center of this in the blue beanie. Let's watch. There she is. Okay, now you see this guy with the back redwards, the backwards red hat. Okay, he's got the white hoodie on with the black shirt. You see him, and the crowd is sort of pushing back and forth. We've got Officer Edwards on the back end. Now let's watch. Okay, and look who that is. That's Ray Epps. Now, they do their very best to cut him out. We'll see in the full video that they cut him out pretty dramatically, but let's watch. Okay, now the fence goes over. You see there's Ray Epps. If you back it up just a quick frame, you saw the guy in the backwards red hat as well. And then this is another angle. This is the officer who's sort of getting knocked over by the crowd, right? And they're breaking through that barrier. As I said previously, Ray Epps was right there, right? This is the first part of the entire breach, and they're cutting him out, right? They really don't want you to see this in this clip. And let's watch the rest of it. Okay, so she just fell. You see how they slow motion that a little bit? And she's getting, there she is, right? And they clipped it. And so you see this guy with the same backwards hoodie and the white Under Armour garment with the black shirt on. He's got the red hat on backwards. And she's laying on the ground there, slow-mo, right? And then they freeze frame it over to her. Now, look, don't doubt that she got injured. Don't doubt that that's horrible, right? She's on the ground. I don't see pools of blood there. I mean, I don't see any, thing that she slipped over that's like slipping on pools of blood. It looked to me like that was something she got knocked over because the crate got moved over, but maybe she's talking about a different scene. I'm not sure, right? I'm not real sure of the different scene or whatever, but then it pans back over to her. All right. Okay. And right, look, like I said, I was probably a little bit too hard on her on the other show. She was there and, she was traumatized, and so that's fine. Now, she also told us about Brian Sicknick when we were doing the show on Thursday. She said she saw Brian Sicknick with his heads in his hands, and that she had thought that she saw him he got sprayed with something, and as a result was injured. And then they're saying that the injury caused his death, and they're making this implication. Okay, it's very dishonest. They're trying to say ultra MAGA crowds murdered Brian Sicknick by virtue of the protest. Totally untrue. Okay, totally untrue. The media ran with this. They held a state funeral for the guy. I think it was in the Senate building, like you give senators and like you give presidents. And it turns out he actually died of natural causes. This came from one article that's linked in the Mindmap, available at j6mindmap.com if you want to follow along at home. It says, despite being sprayed with the chemical substance, his manner of death was natural. Okay, despite being sprayed. Found no evidence of internal or external injuries or of an allergic reaction to the chemical substance. But did say all that transpired played a role in his condition, right? So that's where they're going with this. Natural classification is used, quote, when a disease alone causes death. If death is hastened by an injury, the manner of death is not considered natural. Okay, and he died by natural causes, right? So he had rest in peace. Sorry that he died untimely. Several different strokes, but it wasn't a murder by the insurrectionists. Okay, so stop it with the narrative. Like, be honest about it. But she was implying that, right? And that's what the J6ers are implying. It's dishonest. They are lying to you about it. It's a lie. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's a lie by implication. Now, I wanted to pause on this and show you the full video, okay? Because here in the full video, the one that they played on J6, we get a little bit of a different picture here. Watch this. You see the guy in the red hat, backwards red hat, looks like he's actually helping her. Is he helping her up? What is going on right there? Let's watch the full video of this, shall we? Okay, so here, now we can see that they broke through one of the earlier barriers, and they're approaching this second barrier. You can see here, and the woman, Officer Edwards, is actually going to be back here on the back end where you see her fall, right? We already saw her fall. So now let's watch this. And there may be some bad, words or things like that. So if you have little ones around, content warning. We are talking about the end of America insurrection. Here is this.
Let's go!
All right, so they're screaming for people to come up there. There's a gate right here.
We pay your bills! You back the fuck up!
We pay your bills. Back up. Now that's Officer Edwards, right? We see her right there, standing right there. And now they clip a bunch of this out for us. So they clip a bunch of this out, and we can fast forward a little bit. Now you see Officer Edwards still standing right there. Now watch this guy. He actually takes his jacket off. Okay, so the guy in the red hat takes his jacket off. Jacket comes off. He's going to flip his hat around. You see Officer Edwards. She's looking at him right now from sort of looking to her right. She sees him there. Now he gives somebody the backpack, flips his hat around. There's Officer Edwards, and now he's screaming at her, or at this officer. They're all masked up. Okay, look who that is. Oh, look who just came into the frame. Oh, it's old Ray Epps there. Old Ray Epps goes right up to him and whispers in his ear. And it turns out, I think that's Ryan Samsel. Yeah, that's Ryan Samsel. Hold on one second. Ryan Samsel, J6. Let me make sure that the backwards hat guy is, in fact, Ryan Samsel. Yes, it is. So if you take a look, all right, here's Ryan Samsel. You can see if you just, look his name, that looks like that's Ryan Samsel. And that's who she talked about a lot in the actual proceeding. So there's Ray Epps. He comes up, and they sort of clipped him out of there, right? The first go round on all this, the one that the J6ers showed us. They didn't really see him all that much. So he comes up. He whispers. It looks like he's saying not right now, and then he whispers something. Okay, now he's going, and then this is going. You see Officer Edwards is there. Now there's Ray Epps. And then the whole gate goes over. And look, there's Officer Edwards now. Officer Edwards is down on the ground. So we see Ryan Samsel in the, and we saw some of this, right? This was actually clipped in the footage. And then there's Ray Epps. He's still standing there right behind Ryan Samsel. And let's watch what happens next. Oh, you hear somebody screaming, whoa, 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 whoa. I think that's Ryan Samsel. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, 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 he says, whoa. Okay, so now look at Ryan Samsel. He's actually over there. And who is he helping over there? The camera pans back over there. Oh, is that Officer Edwards? That is Officer Edwards. So Ryan Samsel is now helping Officer Edwards, the backwards red hat guy. What? Oh, that's weird. Oh, yeah. And so I guess him and somebody else, actually another insurrectionist, are all helping Officer Edwards. They're passing her off. And now this guy swings. Now he's going. That's a good one. Now she's right there. Okay, there's Officer Edwards. Here's Ryan Samsel. Now he's standing there. He's like, uh-oh, this is not good. He's looking around at the scene he just caused, apparently, part of his insurrection. And so he's looking, he's going, uh-oh, this got bad. Here's Officer Edwards. We heard her testify. I don't see her bloody. I don't see her slipping in blood. I don't see blood there. So I don't know, look, and to be fair, right, I don't know what happened after this. Did she run back into the building, and then was she slipping in blood inside the building? I don't know. Maybe there was pools of blood inside the building. I didn't see that anywhere. But maybe there was. She said she was engaged in hand-to-hand combat for, multiple hours. I see her standing right there. It looks like a bunch of other officers picked her up and brought her out, got her out. She's standing up there on her own there. And these other gals are just like, they're just like going to the next party. They're going out for lunch or whatever. But Ryan Samsel's now watching the actual ruckus go on. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, and so there was Officer Edwards again, just kind of standing there. There she is again. And now she starts going back. So she is running back. She's running back into the Capitol, but I mean, I don't know if she... That must be when the hand-to-hand combat starts, or maybe those are back where those pools of blood are they're pools of blood back in the Capitol building somewhere. I'm not real sure. But that's the full video. Okay, so that's the full video. So Ryan Samsel, the guy in the J6 video who was murdering her, actually went over and like helped her up and is like, uh-oh, shoot, and then handed her off to the police. So, you know, it's weird. Like everywhere we look, there are like people who are instigating it and then sort of not instigating it. Okay, like Ray Epps screaming, we're going into the Capitol. And then he goes up and he says, actually, we're not really going into the Capitol. Ryan Samsel's like, let's eliminate all these cops until one gets hurt. And then he's not actually hurting her, right? He's actually helping her up. So it's weird. You know, it's weird. A lot of curious testimony and videos coming out of all of that. But that's all at the Mindmap. If you want to go check that out, j6mindmap.com. And you see, here's a couple screenshots of that. There's Ryan Samsel looking over at the crowd. There's another one of him helping her up. And it's just, yeah, there he is, Ryan Samsel. So I took a screenshot of that. So, okay, well, I know, another interesting thing there. Just another interesting thing. Like, for example, if I was if this were a legitimate type of a trial, like if they actually were prosecuting somebody or whatever, that would be something that would be worth cross-examining Officer Edwards about. Just say it. Now, indicative of even more dishonesty from the J6 committee, let's take a look at this Trump tweet that they failed to read in its entirety, that they read out of context in order to smear Donald Trump. Let's see what this one says. Remember that Liz Cheney came out and she said this at the hearing.
Donald Trump tweeted.
What did he tweet?
But he did not condemn the attack.
He didn't?
Instead, he justified it.
Now, I've been very irritated with Liz about this whole line of questioning, okay? A lot of these criticisms being lobbed by the J6ers are saying that Donald Trump's judgment was bad because he didn't do X, Y, and Z. All right? That's not how this works at all, right? He's the president. He gets to make decisions, and he gets to use his judgment. If you wanted to impose yours in place of his, you could do that if you were the president, but that's not illegal for him to make a different judgment. He doesn't have to say what you say, what you wanted him to say. He doesn't have to do what you expect him to do. What Liz Cheney is doing here is trying to establish what's called a standard of care type of baseline in the law. We talk about this in the law all the time. Okay, what's the standard of care? If a doctor is going to be sued, they typically will say, did that doctor's treatment fall below the standard of care? Does that mean, did that doctor's behavior fall below the line of what a standard, reasonable, ordinarily prudent doctor would do, or what the medical associate, the AMA says to do? Like, they set these standards. There's no baseline set standard for a president. He doesn't have to spring into action and scream out something. Okay, this argument was made a lot back during George Bush's era. Remember, Michael Moore made the same argument in a movie. He put Fahrenheit 9/11. Remember that movie? George Bush was sitting there reading to kindergartners when he got notice that 9/11 was underway. And remember, Michael Moore and all the liberals were screaming at him and saying he should have sprung into action. He just sat there. Michael Moore put it in the movie. He just sat there for 9 more minutes or whatever because he needed his advisors to come tell him what to do. Poor George Bush. He's so dumb, right? They're saying you should have done something that we think was appropriate. And because you didn't, therefore you're negligent. You've fallen below the standard of care. It's a very, very bad argument. It's obviously something that would fail basically anywhere else, but this is a show trial. Nobody's going to ask them about this argument. You're going to see it a lot. Liz Cheney, she made this argument in the run up to these hearings. She said specifically, Donald Trump was in the room next door watching it on TV, right? And she was very mad that it took him so long to get out there and make a statement. Lady, he doesn't have to make a statement on your clock. He's the president, not you. He doesn't have to make a statement at all. Now, you can make your opinion known that you think he should have made a statement, or maybe a more responsible president would have made a statement, or maybe it would have been better form to make a statement. Those are all separate arguments. That's not what's happening here. Those are political arguments. This is essentially a criminal show trial is what this is intending to be, right? They're prosecuting people with crimes here. They're subpoenaing members of Congress. If she doesn't like Trump's response, she's free to run campaign ads against it, not use the levers of government to go and prosecute an entire political party. So pay close attention to this argument. It's something she does very repeatedly. Donald Trump didn't do something the way I think he should have done it. Therefore, it's illegal or it's bad or it's insurrectionary. It's basically anytime anybody has any discretion over a decision, if apparently, according to Liz, if it doesn't comport to her standard, it's insurrection.
These are the things and events that happen, he said, when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who've been badly and unfairly treated for so long.
Now watch.
As you will see in the hearings to come, President Trump believed his...
Wait, Liz, you didn't finish. You didn't finish the tweet. Go back, Liz. There's a whole next sentence there. 2 sentences. It says, after she finished reading it, the last 2 sentences say, "Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever." Why didn't she read those last 2 sentences? Let's listen again. She skips right over them.
And viciously stripped away from great patriots who've been badly and unfairly treated for so long. As you will see in the hearings to come, President Trump believed...
It's on the screen in front of all those people, and they didn't even read it. It says, "Go home in love and in peace. Remember this day forever. Go home with love and in peace." Read the rest of the tweet, Liz, you stinking liar. These people are liars. Read it. She didn't read it because she's a scam artist, and this is a political show trial.
And I quote, "We're doing what they should be doing."
Scam liars. All right. So another lie, right? They just are asking you to connect the dots there. And I guess I guess everybody in the room is just too stupid to read the last sentence. Okay. Let's keep going. All right. So then there was a whole saga about Ivanka Trump. Ivanka Trump apparently believed Bill Barr, which is apparently shocking news. Because guess what? He was the attorney general at the time. She said that she believed Bill Barr. This made the media, do hyperventilations for the last, 48 hours. There's dissension in the Trump household. Donald Trump and Jared Kushner and old Ivanka are all at odds with one another. And maybe they are, I don't know. But here's what happened at that ceremony.
This is the president's daughter commenting on Bill Barr's statement that the department found no fraud sufficient to overturn the election.
How did that affect your perspective about the election when Attorney General Barr made that statement?
It affected my perspective.
Because he's the Attorney General.
Attorney General Barr.
Yeah.
So I accepted what he was saying.
Okay, so wow, she accepted what Bill Barr was saying. Wow, shocking. So I guess that's the end of the Trump family, right? Donald Trump had one perspective, Bill Barr had another perspective. Ivanka sided with Bill Barr, and that proves, I guess, something. I don't know. And they're trying to do this, all over the place. It's just politics. It doesn't answer any questions for us at all about Donald Trump. I guess what they're trying to do is say everybody in Donald Trump's orbit, or everybody who's reasonable around Donald Trump, was saying, "It's over, bro. You lost. Give it up." And so what they're saying is that sort of brought him underneath that standard of care. I mean, that's the argument they're making, but come on. All right. So here's what Donald Trump says, Ivanka was not even involved in looking at studying the election results. She had long since checked out and was, in my opinion, only trying to be respectful to Bill Barr and his position as Attorney General. Parentheses, he sucked. He wrote a one-sided, totally partisan political witch hunt. Yeah, well, all right, that's Donald Trump. Oh, yeah, well, look, I can't even imagine what it's like having Donald Trump as your father. It's probably like that. It's like, you're grounded and you're dead to me. Get out of here. Okay, well, I'll take you back in. If you apologize, go apologize, and you apologize and you can come back in. But now you're fired. Get out. Get your stuff. Get out of here, right? It must be, sounds kind of fun, actually. All right, so let's finally get to Bill Barr, right? We've got Bill Barr now, who came out. This was the big statement, and we already knew this. This wasn't a new revelation to us. We covered this here on this channel. Bill Barr apparently said the B word, the BS word, saying this was a lot of nonsense. But it's weird because we have a different clip from Bill Barr from previously, where he had a little different take on a lot of this. So let's watch here what happened at this fake hearing.
I saw absolutely zero basis for the allegations, but they were made in such a sensational way that they obviously were influencing a lot of people, members of the public, that there was this systemic corruption in the system and that their votes didn't count and that these machines controlled by somebody else were actually determining it, which was complete nonsense. And it was being laid out there. And I told them that it was crazy stuff and they were wasting their time on that. And it was doing a grave disservice to the country.
Crazy stuff, just crazy stuff. No basis for it at all. Just totally ridiculous. It's all nonsense, whatever, blah, blah. But then you find this clip from Bill Barr where he's on CNN. I think this was CNN. Yeah, there it is. Having a conversation with them about this.
This is a, sort of cheap talk to get around the fundamental problem.
What is it, Bill?
Which is the bipartisan commission chaired by Jimmy Carter and James Baker said back in 2009 that mail-in voting is fraught with the risk of fraud and coercion.
But since then, there have been
until
a lot
this
of investigations that haven't proved it.
Let me talk.
Yeah, please.
And since that time, there have been in the newspapers, in networks, academic studies saying it is open to fraud and coercion. The only time the narrative changed is after this administration came in.
Well, that's
but
weird.
Elections that have been held with mail have found substantial fraud and coercion. For example, we indicted someone in Texas, 1,700 ballots collected from people who could vote. He made them out and voted for the person he wanted to. Okay,
well,
that kind of thing happens with mail-in ballots, and everyone knows that.
But there are individual cases. But as far as widespread fraud, we haven't seen that since.
Well, we haven't had the kind of widespread use of mail-in ballots that's being proposed. We've had absentee ballots from people who request them from a specific address. Now what we're talking about is mailing them to everyone on the voter list when everyone knows those voter lists are inaccurate. People who should get them don't get them, which is what has been one of the major complaints in states that have tried this in municipal elections. And people who get them are not the right people. They're people who have replaced the previous occupant, and they can make them out. And sometimes multiple ballots come to the same address.
Doesn't sound that crazy at all. He was just saying how crazy all this was, right? It was crazy. He didn't see anything. This is weird. Sounds like he's got a whole vision painted out about exactly how this could be a problem.
The whole several generations of occupants. Do you think that's a way to run a vote?
So far, we haven't seen widespread.
Wow. Okay. So that's what we've got from Bill Barr. Apparently, I don't know what happened there. Something must have changed because it sounds like he had some concerns. Now, that was before the election, right? He wasn't making any statements about the 2020 election. That was all, I think, before. And I just had a whole different take as something happened. Weird. Anyway, so that's Bill Barr. Now, we also know Scott Perry came out. He was very irritated. One of the other big claims that the useless committee said that they could prove was that many Republicans were actually whining to Donald Trump. They wanted pardons because of their involvement in the insurrection. And Scott Perry came out on Twitter, said, "The notion that I ever sought a presidential pardon for myself or other members of Congress is an absolute shameless and soulless lie." Now, the committee, according to Manu Raju, says, hold on there, buddy boy. We're going to be able to prove this. Cheney says that multiple House Republicans sought pardons for their roles and says Perry has refused to testify, saying that they actually have documents from him saying that he contacted the White House and he requested that. So, who knows what they've got? We'll have to follow along and see. They've also released some preliminary viewing numbers. They weren't all that good. We saw Breitbart gave us, I think, an updated number. Said 19 million viewers across 5 networks, a preliminary figure that fell short of last year's State of the Union. So the State of the Union last year was 38 million viewers. This year looks like it was about half that, so about 19. Figure beat out the daytime broadcast of the Mueller hoax, 6 million views. but it was about 19 million who tuned in. Now, so about half of the State of the Union is basically what those numbers look like. So, people who say that this was a blowout, I think are wrong. People who say that this, like, nobody watched this, I think are wrong. It's sort of somewhere in the middle there, I'd guess, but not what they were hoping for, obviously, right? They wanted 50 million viewers. Everybody tuning in. Wasn't even close to that. So they laid out for us. I think we've got a couple things. Yeah, so let's lay out, before we look at the other cases, before we dive into the cases, I want to show you this one interesting argument that popped up that came out. So when we were covering the hearing, a commenter sent this one in and said, hey, Rob, actually, there was an offer for the National Guard, right? This is from the section where we talk about law enforcement being complicit. And remember, we talked previously about the argument that DC Mayor Muriel Bowser rejected additional National Guard troops. Okay, we already talked about that. Here we have the link to her actual letter that went out. She says, to be clear, DC is not requesting any federal law enforcement personnel, no National Guards, and we discourage any additional deployment without immediate notification. Okay, she sent that on January 5th. Somebody just turned on a loud machine right outside my window. I don't know if you can hear that. And I don't know what that is. Hang on one second. It's literally outside my window. 1 second. I'll be right back. All right. Well, hopefully Ivanka said you can't hear anything, so hopefully that's not too bad. I have a noise gate on here that is supposed to take out that low drowning. No, I don't know what it is. It's actually very loud. But I think my noise effects might actually cut it out. Okay, so I'll keep going. If you guys are good, I'll just keep going. If it becomes a problem, then I'll stop it. But it's really actually quite loud outside my window. So I'll keep going as long as you guys are okay with that. All right. So as I was saying, the Muriel Bowser, we've talked about this, the idea that law enforcement was complicit, or they were grossly negligent. They didn't want law enforcement to show up because they wanted something bad to happen, right? And I know it's a bad sort of thing to imply, but it's something that we've seen some evidence for, right? People are actually sort of turning down requests for additional support. Why is this a problem? Well, because we knew that this was going to happen. We knew the FBI was monitoring this. They had agents there. Many of these protests and groups, hashtag, were all well organized or well being used because people had to know about it in order to show up there on January 6th. So they show up, and you would presume that our so-called intelligence agencies would be able to be intelligent enough to prepare for their arrival. Turns out they weren't. But one step further is saying that they weren't just sort of negligent. They weren't just underprepared. They were actually complicit. They wanted Donald Trump to slip on it and step in it and sort of, cause a big problem for himself. We talked previously about Muriel Bowser rejecting the National Guard, but this is a whole different can of worms. Stephen Sund, National Guard request denied. Stephen Sund is somebody who was the former Capitol Hill Police Department chief of police. And this, I think we talked about this when this was all unfolding, but this was a department timeline that I found on the internet. Somebody linked this up to me on Twitter. Shout out to whoever that was. But this was a timeline that was assembled, it looks like, by the U.S. Capitol Police, right? Or by some agency doing a review on this. And if you scroll all the way down to, and this is in the Mindmap at j6mindmap.com, if you actually scroll over into, I think it was on January 4th, we see this timeline that on January 4th, U.S. Capitol Police holds an internal briefing to review the January 3rd event. right? U.S. Capitol Police issues the January 3rd special event assessment. Okay, they're all preparing for it. U.S. personnel attends a multi-agency teleconference here on January 4th, hosted by the MPD, the Metro Police, in which agencies brief on intelligence and planning for the J6 event. They're all planning for this. Now, COP Sund, see this next bullet point? Chief of Police Sund attends the briefing for the J6 event with law enforcement partners, including the following agencies. Everybody's there. MPD, DC National Guard, House Sergeant at Arms, Senate Sergeant at Arms, Architect of the Capitol, U.S. Secret Service, both uniformed and ununiformed, FBI, Washington Field Office, U.S. Park Police, Metro Police, Amtrak Police, U.S. Army Military District, right? The whole stinking police department of every single everybody. Last bullet point says COP Sund, the Chief of Police Sund, asks the Senate Sergeant at Arms Michael Stenger and House Sergeant at Arms Paul Irving for authority to have the National Guard assist with security. See that? Sund asks both House Sergeant at Arms for authority to have the National Guard assist with security. Next page, saying this assessment is needed based on a briefing with law enforcement partners and a revised intelligence assessment. Okay, Stephen Sund saying we need more National Guard here. COP Sund's request is denied. Senate Sergeant at Arms and the House Sergeant at Arms tell COP Sund now contact General Walker at the DC National Guard to discuss their ability to support a request if needed. Sund notifies General Walker of the DC Guard, saying U.S. Capitol Police may need DC Guard, but I don't have authority to request it at this time. So Sund says once it's authorized, DC National Guard could send 125 troops, and the troops would need to be sworn in by the U.S. Capitol Police. Revised joint session issued, they create a plan, whole thing gets restricted, and the days just moves on. So there was an actual request by the U.S. Capitol Police, rejected by the House Sergeant at Arms, also rejected by DC Mayor Muriel Bowser. So it's weird. Everywhere we turn, there's requests denied. People are thinking about it. I mean, my goodness, look at all these police agencies, all of these law enforcement agencies, MPD, National Guard, all of them. And they couldn't protect the Capitol building. So you just have to ask yourself, it's like, come on. I mean, it's like if a black belt got his butt whooped by a white belt. You go, come on. Are you serious right now? Like, you let that happen, didn't you? You didn't let me win. You know, you're playing video games with somebody and they're way better at you, and like you win a game and you're like, come on, like I know what you did there, thanks. But it's just like that. It feels like they almost maybe let it happen almost, you know? And so now that timeline is now also added on the j6mindmap.com, so you can check that out. Now, the two people who were responsible for rejecting those requests here were House Sergeant at Arms Paul Irving, got a photograph of him, and then Senate Sergeant at Arms Michael Stenger. And stuff has happened with all these people. You know, Stephen Sund, I think, has resigned since then. I think when I was looking up these two guys, they're no longer in charge, or one of them's on his way out. The other one's probably on his way out soon. So the whole thing is just like, you know, weird. A lot of requests for it. Almost feels like they kind of wanted it to happen, you know, or they wouldn't have been upset if it happened. They would have just said, you know, this might be something that would take out Donald Trump. And if you think it's conspiratorial, and I even I sort of listen to myself saying this, and I'm like, it's kind of weird, you know, to even sort of be thinking like that. It's kind of, it sort of does sound conspiratorial, but, you know, then you look at what the FBI has done previously, like they set up Governor Whitmer, they sort of allowed themselves to be duped by Michael Sussman, and, you know, the entire sort of effort by the Democrats to win the election was all communicated to us via, I think it was the Atlantic article. Remember when they said how we did it kind of a thing? It was like an OJ type of a model where they said, yeah, we met every single day on Zoom with our AFL-CIO leadership, and we were concocting the whole scheme. We know that because we covered the Michael Sussman trial. Mark Elias and Michael Sussman were doing it with Rodney Jaffe and many others. Now, that's what took place. What's happening? What's coming forward? We're going to see on next week. Man, you know, look, it's going to be a long week. Okay, we've got 3 hearings next week on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, which means that's going to be like 7 a.m. my time. That's going to be an early show. Oh, it's going to be an early show. So we're going to cover that one live, probably go live at like 6:30 and do a recap on some of this stuff, and then we'll launch right into it. So 10 a.m., we'll cover that here. Then on Wednesday, we'll have another one, another 10 a.m.er. And then, you know, folks, I usually go to the gym first things. This is going to cut into my gym time, so I might be a little bit cranky on these days. So these shows might be a little extra spicy. So here we can see on Thursday then, we've got June 16th, 1 p.m. Eastern time. That's good. It'll be like 10 o'clock here, our time. And then we've got episodes 5 and 6, which have not been scheduled yet. It's a limited series. It's a 6-episode series. So on Monday, it's going to be The Big Lie. That's what we're talking about. And I sort of categorize, I've labeled these episodes for them. The Big Lie is going to be all about Donald Trump, how he knew he lost the election, and he engaged in a massive effort to spread false and fraudulent information. So it's probably going to be a bunch of tweets and a bunch of, bunch of the usual stuff from them. And then on Wednesday, we're going to get the AG. So now they're going to say that he tried to replace the Attorney General. And I think on that day, we're going to hear testimony from these three people. Jeff Rosen, Richard Donahue, and Stephen Engel, who are sort of part of Trump Legal. And they're also, okay, so I'm going to put that one over there. The Big Lie is going to talk about how everything Donald Trump was saying was fraudulent. Of course, all sorts of warnings about the Dominion now from CISA. They're now publicly talking about it. A lot of vulnerabilities in those systems. You better prepare for that. So we'll sort of have our rebuttals prepared for Monday. We'll have our rebuttals prepared for Wednesday. We'll have our rebuttals prepared for Thursday. Thursday is going to be all about Mike Pence. Mike Pence, of course, the subject of a lot of this. They were saying Donald Trump wanted him hanged. Donald Trump rejected that on Truth Social, said, I did not think that. And we've already pre-butted this argument as well. We talked about the actual real difficulty in this process. Okay, it's not as easy as they'd like it to you to believe. It's not like Mike Pence just counts the votes and they just nice job counting them. It's done. Right? It's actually really complicated. Okay, and there's 2 full articles if you want to read the details on this. I'm not going to go into it right now, but Congressional Research Service said specifically, a quick highlight here is, hey guys, the record and the disputes over the Electoral Count Act has been debated for a long time. Since 1877, they codified it in 1877, into 1887, and then there was another amended process. They say due to the absence of specific and persuasive authority on some of these issues, this report attempts to resolve some of the possible issues, but not necessarily resolving them by reference to any authoritative source or decisions. Precedents, they say, are inconsistent with the express provisions of the 1887 Act. So it's conflicted. They're conflicting all over the place. So it's something that's a little bit more murky than they'd like you to believe. Okay, so that's what's coming up on the J6 hearing. We're going to have a full week of that and be some early mornings. It's going to start the day off with Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson on Monday and Wednesday. Oh, gosh. Cancel all my meetings those days. All right, so just kidding about that. If you're listening and we have a meeting scheduled, I'm not going to cancel it. All right, so that's what we had. Now, those are the J6 fake hearing updates. We do have some pretty interesting updates from Steve Bannon, and as we can see here, Peter Navarro. I was going to say Michael Sussman, but I still have that on the brain. Here, let's start with Steve. Let's start with Peter Navarro. Peter Navarro is the quicker update, I think. Peter Navarro, of course, was indicted very recently, and I think that they were timing this to coincide with what they were doing this week and the next week. They arrested the Proud Boys on Monday. They arrested Peter Navarro shortly before that, and it's all in this run-up to the big media circus. This is their big debut, limited series. They're hoping for high ratings, and so they've got to all get it together. Peter Navarro, though, has been making me nervous, all right, to be perfectly honest. He does not have a lawyer. He still does not have a lawyer. On previous shows, I talked about why that was problematic. One of the big things that happened with Navarro, and one of the things that he alleges, he sent this in a letter last week on the 7th, saying that I basically wanted a continuance of his court date one of the things that he raised was a right to counsel violation, saying that when he was arrested at the airport, they denied him an opportunity to call for a lawyer. And he said that specifically in the letter. And I was like jumping out of the window when I was reading that, because I was thinking, that's a catastrophic problem if the government did in fact deny you access to your lawyer. Now, it turns out I'm not sure that he actually had a lawyer, because he still doesn't have a lawyer, or who he would have called. And, you know, there's some contingencies on that. Like, you don't get to say, I want to call a lawyer. And the FBI's like, darn it, those are magical words. I guess you're free now. Go do whatever you want, right? It doesn't work that way. It's like, well, I need to call a lawyer. Okay, so now that means I can go to an internet cafe and get a latte, use my laptop, and I'll let you know when I found my lawyer, and you can come and arrest me, you know, next week when I'm ready. It's not how it works. So they just say, okay, well, we're going to arrest you anyways, and we'll give you access to your lawyer when we get down to booking. We're not going to ask any questions or anything like that. Don't say anything. You know, you're not under interrogation. So Miranda and all the, it's a very, very complicated, very detailed, specific area of the law. And you can really take, you know, a 30-second interaction and unpack that into 100 pages of legal analysis. So I don't know what the details are, but I do know that Peter Navarro is not equipped or competent to investigate that issue. And if there is, in fact, a right to counsel violation, he's not going to be the one to, you know, deliver a victory as a consequence of that, in all likelihood. I could be wrong. Maybe he is. Maybe he's a scholar, legal scholar that I don't know about. But he sent a letter to the judge and he brought it up. I was saying, not a good idea, because the right way to approach that would have been to schedule an interview with the officer, ask him a bunch of questions about other shiny objects, then ask him a question about that particular segment of his investigation when he was speaking about counsel and all. What did he say? You get witnesses lined up, anybody else on the tarmac, you get any surveillance footage, you get anything, anybody who's recording it, you know, all these cell phone videos. So you can really pin this officer down, this FBI agent down, and see if there actually, in fact, was a right to counsel violation. Probably going to lose the opportunity to do that because Navarro's handling this on his own. But he also, on Friday, since he still does not have a lawyer, he kind of got scolded by the judge, okay? And we've got Peter Navarro coming up next week also. And so what is that date going to be? The 17th looks like, hang on, the 17th is going to be Friday. He's got a court date coming up on Friday. That's going to be, it looks like, his arraignment and a status conference. So hopefully he gets an attorney by then, but there is going to be a public call-in line on that, which will be cool. So we'll get some good reporting on that. We can't broadcast the phone calls because these are federal court proceedings. Otherwise, I would like to, you know, listen to it together, but we can't do that. Illegal. But the judge also did sort of scold him on Friday. Let me show you what's going on here. Over at the court docket, you can see, if we zoom in on this, a lot of activity in Navarro over the last couple days. So we scroll all the way down. This is from the federal docket. We've got, sorry for all the scrolling around. Here on 6/9, we got several entries. First, we had a response by the United States to Peter Navarro's letter. Okay, I talked to you previously about the letter that Peter Navarro sent. Let's do just a quick recap on that. Peter Navarro sent this letter, and it's, you know, this is not kind of the proper way to communicate, but he just emailed the court clerk, essentially, and said, "Dear Judge, this is what I want." And we read through this last week, so I'm not going to read through it here. But he's asking the judge to do a bunch of stuff that the judge really can't do. And the prosecutors responded to this. And so they wrote this 6-page motion, which, of course, is going to be a lot more, you know, on point and proper. But they're saying that they say that his prior letter contains numerous misrepresentations, saying the public has a strong interest in resolving this case quickly. So they're opposing the delay. Okay. I didn't intend to get into all of this right now. Let me see if I can summarize this quickly, and then we'll jump into the next issue because we still have all of Steve Bannon left. If you go back to this, they're fighting in these two motions Peter Navarro wants this case continued out. He wants this pushed out further because he's got a civil lawsuit that is moving forward, and he wants that to be resolved first before this case is resolved. Now, the DOJ knows that their time is limited. They are prosecuting this case justified by the January 6th fake select committee. That committee may be evaporating next year when the Republicans take control of the House, or it may become their committee. It's probably either going to go away or it's now their committee. And the DOJ knows if that happens, well, they're going to lose some of the support that they need to prosecute this case. Okay, they need the committee to send them all sorts of discovery and prepare their witnesses and all of that, right? The prosecutors are just a prosecutor. They need people to come in and testify. They need the evidence and all of that to lay the foundation and make the case. So if the fake committee is evaporated next year because their jurisdiction is now in control of the Republicans, then they no longer have the ability to prosecute, or it becomes a lot more difficult if they've got non-cooperative witnesses, right? So they want to go quickly. Peter Navarro says, can I have a continuance? Can I have an extension, please? The prosecutors are saying, no. We got to go like right now because the American people need closure. And normally this is the opposite. Normally the prosecutors are fine with continuances, and normally defense attorneys sort of want to use that right to a speedy trial, to go to trial quickly, because that sort of puts the government on the heels a little bit. You know, like for example, the best way to explain this is in a DUI case, which my law firm helps good people with all over the state of Arizona, rrlawaz.com. Links are down in the description. Free case evaluations. We really love helping good people find safety, clarity, and hope. But DUI cases are a really good example because let's say, for example, you get stopped and cited and charged with a DUI. They draw your blood. In some states, they can analyze your blood very quickly. In other states, sometimes they're backlogged and it takes months for them to analyze it. Some states are set up for a fast DUI alcohol turnaround, whereas some other states, like say for drug analysis, they take a long time, months and months. So what happens now, if you say, I'm going to exercise my right to a speedy trial, I want trial in 180 days, but it takes the government 270 days to test your blood sample. Well, they're outside. They can't come up with the evidence in time. And so they're not going to be able to have that blood evidence ready against you in your trial that takes place 180 days after the arraignment. So you can use that to your advantage. So the defense wants to go quickly. The prosecution wants to go slowly because they're dragging their feet testing your blood sample. So same type of concept generally happens across other types of cases. Peter Navarro sort of doing the opposite. I want to extend this out. Prosecutor saying, no, let's close this quickly. And so they're fighting back and forth over that. We'll see what the judge does. And he'll probably rule on that on Thursday. Friday, I think is when we saw. Now, the other thing that I really wanted to spend a little time on from him, not a lot because it's pretty quick, but the judge said this on the 9th, says, all right, everybody. He's saying this to Peter and everybody. In the last 2 days, Peter, the defendant, has twice communicated with the court by emailing the courtroom deputy, in that letter that we just read, without copying government counsel, right? Got to notify the prosecutor too. Judge says this is not proper. Defendant is not permitted to have ex parte communications with the court. That means you can't just talk to the court on your own. You got to talk to the court and let the prosecutor know about it. And he's explaining it to Peter. He says that is communications outside the presence of government counsel, absent the court's consent. So he says, Peter, if the defendant wishes to communicate with the court, he shall do so through filing a written submission through the clerk's office. Alternatively, he can seek permission to obtain filing privileges for the court's online filing system. Securing privileges requires following the rules, and then you can use the website. Now, the judge says, this is like a warning, right? The court assumes the defendant was unaware of the prohibition on ex parte communications and trusts that they will cease going forward. Signed by Judge Maida on 6/9. All right, so in other words, stop doing that, Peter. Stop emailing the clerk, get your filings in order, and start copying the prosecutors. And he's talking about this document that Peter sent over, right? This was another filing that came in, And here's what this one looks like. And this one's a little bit better than an email. It says, this is from Peter Navarro. It's 3 pages, so let's read it. He says, motion for documents pertaining to arrest. Peter writes, I think this is Peter writing. Yeah, he says, I'm actively seeking counsel, so he's not gotten a lawyer yet. He says, all right, Judge, to determine key facts in this case, including facts relating to the defendant's motion requesting a continuance, I am moving that the prosecution immediately provide, number 1, all video and audio recordings of the defendant's arrests from the jetway at Reagan Airport to the FBI holding facility. Very good request. I would love to know what that says. Number 2, full transcripts of the conversations that took place. And number 3, which they're not going to give him. And 3, all notes, like they're not going to transcribe everything, right? 3, all notes that contributed to the reported issue on June 6 by Special Agents Walter Giardina and Special Agent Sebastian Gardner. Ooh, okay, so we've got some names that we can add over onto the mind map, which we will do for Peter Navarro, because Peter Navarro now has some witnesses. So we've got some FBI agents that we'll just throw in there. And I'll come clean that up later. All right, so we go back over to this document. He says he wants signed affidavits saying that they denied the defendant requested a call where he was taken, and saying that he was read his Miranda rights from a written sheet of paper. So they're not going to sign affidavits for him either. Okay, like, this is a smart guy who's trying his best to interface with the law and the courts, and it's not good. It's not a good idea. And so he's asking for good things, like he's directionally accurate, but this really should be done through the public defender, through his lawyer, because this is not how this works. Like, they're not going to sign affidavits for you. They work for the FBI, not for you. The defendant further moves the prosecution reveal any role it may have played in providing any documents in the assignment of a public defender mere minutes before the arraignment, in lieu of allowing the defendant to call for legal advice during his hours of incarceration prior to his arrest on the jetway. He writes, the prosecution had made a key point of its opposition to the request for a continuance, saying the defendant has consistently indicated he's not represented and no need or desire for outside counsel. He's saying this claim is false. Saying, I have been trying to get counsel. As soon as the defendant asked to call for legal advice, the agent should have read from a written card. They did not do so, and therefore they deprived the defendant of his appropriate counsel. So he's sort of like, doing several things in one, right? He's filing a motion for discovery, saying, I want this evidence, but he's also sort of filing like a motion to dismiss a little bit. Instead of acknowledging in their report that the defendant immediately requested the opportunity to call for advice, they falsely say Giardina raised the issue about whether he wanted to call an attorney. This is a serious form of misdirection, he says. As further deflection, the FBI agents created the false impression that the only person he wanted to call was the TV producer, which he was on the way to Mike Huckabee's show. Because Giardina did not act upon the repeated request for legal counsel, he says he spent several hours in jail and then was told he could meet with the public defender. He says, while the public defender was a fine person, she had little command of the facts in the case, as would be expected, which is true, because she's a public defender. She just got the case dropped on her lap. Says this put the defendant in a far greater disadvantage. And he says, I wonder if that's the prosecution's intent. And the judge is going to read this and say, look, it's not. Like, this is what happens in every single arrest. The defendant also notes for the record that he provided Deputy Attorney Patricia Alloy 2 days prior to the arrest with the name of an attorney to call to negotiate with. Now, that is disgusting behavior, okay? That is really gross. If that's true, like if they arrested this guy on the tarmac, and if this prosecutor, I don't know who this prosecutor is. Deputy Attorney Patricia Alloy, is that a government DOJ prosecutor? Let's see. Department of Justice. Let's see if I can find Alloy. Yeah, it looks like Aloy is here. So that is a DOJ person. Okay, so here, Eric Holder is nominating Elizabeth Aloy, A. Aloy. That's Patricia. Is that the same name? Is Elizabeth Patricia? No, I don't think so. So maybe that's not the same person. I don't know. Okay. So here, it's not A either, right? It's not. Okay. So anyway, so somebody, maybe it is a U.S. DOJ lawyer. I don't know. But if a prosecutor did not give him the opportunity to self-surrender, that's a professional non-courtesy. Very, very rude. The defendant also notes that Aloy chose not to contact that attorney prior to the arrest, made no effort to alert that attorney. It's just a common courtesy. You say, hey, I'm a defense attorney. I'm representing this client. You're a prosecutor. You want to arrest him. I represent him. Let me know about it. I'll bring him down. Just let me know. We'll show up. Don't need to make a big deal about this whole thing. Says the defendant does not recall the agents reading his Miranda rights from any written text, but rather delivering the notice in a casual and improvisational manner. So he's now raising a Miranda right violation, saying with regard to the public release of the FBI, the defendant finds it necessary now to set the record straight about false and misleading impressions. Fact, the defendant was in a jail cell in leg irons for several hours at the courthouse after a strip search without access to counsel. There actually may be a serious counsel violation here. Like if he communicated to the DOJ that he had a lawyer and they just said, we're going to arrest you anyways and not give you access to that lawyer, there may be something here. A request for water was denied. There was no food available. The fact that the defendant was out of FBI custody doesn't mean all this didn't happen. The media needs to report this accurately. He says, as a final note in consideration of this motion, defendant was contacted by a former high-ranking FBI agent who described the way he was taken into custody as outrageous, far outside the norms, and yet, quote, another example that, quote, the FBI once again allowed themselves to be used as a political pawn by the DOJ. In the discussion, this former FBI agent said that it is common practice for white-collar defendants to arrange voluntary surrender. Exactly. And said here there was not even any fraud alleged. He said the defendant called Giardina 2 days before the arrest and had a cordial conversation saying, I'm happy to comply with the subpoena. Don't come to my doors in the early hours. Just call me. And they still showed up and arrested him at the airport. Says if the defendant had been simply allowed to voluntarily surrender, he would have been able to have access to the legal advice he sought at the time of the arrest, and this issue would be moot. Instead, he became yet another object of the kind of intimidation and humiliation the FBI has gotten into the practice of inflicting on Trump allies, a practice which, in this case, may also have included a leak to the press of the arrest while he was there in solitary confinement. Therefore, he's asking that his request be granted and they postpone the arraignment. Okay, so it may all be true, but he can't keep submitting this stuff to the court. So somebody, for the love of all, find this guy a lawyer. Okay, these may be very good arguments that he's just throwing out there, and it's unfortunate. So kind of intimidation, and I would say that for anybody, right? Everybody should have a lawyer. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. This is not good. And this happens more often than you think. People come to me and they say, hey, I thought I could just fire off a bunch of letters and solve it. And it doesn't solve it. It actually makes things dramatically worse because now we have to undo all of these statements and all of these admissions and all of these sort of strategic decision-making points are all now out there, wide in the open. So a little bit of a bummer. That is, though, from Peter Navarro. I really do hope he gets counsel soon because he needs it. And that's the update. Now, he's got court coming up on Friday. Of course, we'll continue to follow that one as well. We also have an update on Steve Bannon, and then we'll wrap it up here for the day. So Steve Bannon, of course, was sort of the big first indictment, and they were very, very excited about him. He got a subpoena early back in last year, September of last year. 2021, declined to show up to the fake committee hearing. They sent him a letter. His attorney sent him a letter back. I'm not going. He got indicted, has been arrested, and his trial is coming up really soon. It's coming up on the 18th, so about a month and a week away from today. And we're going to be covering that one, I'm sure, so long as there's interest. Now, it's probably not going to be publicized, right? So probably will not be a call-in line. There'll be some Twitter threads. If there is enough interest, like last time, there was the opportunity to obtain the transcripts and read through the transcripts. But it was expensive, and so I need to certainly make sure that that's something that you, the audience, wants to participate in. But we'll see as we get closer on that date. But for the time being, here's what we can see. We've got an amicus that was filed by Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy is a big sort of a GOP person. I think he's the House Minority Leader. And he actually wrote a very good amicus brief. And what this means is this is a friend of the court. It's a friendly brief. This is a criminal prosecution by Joe Biden and the Select Committee, by Merrick Garland, by the U.S. Department of Justice against Steve Bannon. Kevin McCarthy has gotten a subpoena from the same committee, but he has not been charged or indicted yet. But he's saying, I could be, baby, because this is really sort of similar to my type of case. Steve Bannon got a subpoena. He didn't show up. Now he's been prosecuted. I'm not Steve Bannon, but I also got a very similar subpoena. And now I'm wondering, do I need to show up or am I going to be prosecuted? Now, a little bit of a difference between Bannon and McCarthy in that Bannon is no longer an elected official, or never was. He was a Trump advisor. But McCarthy is an elected official who got, he's in the House of Representatives. And so now you've got some sort of legislative privilege, and you've got separation of powers issues to a whole sort of new interesting degree, because now this is the fake Select Committee investigating a member of their own branch of government, right? It's a political prosecution within the branch. I mean, it's really horrific in America, but it's what's happening. So now McCarthy is sending a letter, a motion over to the court, an amicus, saying, I'm a friend of the court. I know I'm not being prosecuted, but Steve Bannon is, and I'm awfully close to a very similar prosecution. And so, Judge, here are my arguments as to why this case is garbage. And they're actually very good arguments. Many of the same arguments that we were making here for a long time, largely that the committee is illegally constituted and fake, in my opinion. And so here you can see, we covered this one previously, 15-page document, but the table of contents, we did a deep dive on this in one of the prior shows. But it tells us that one of the main arguments is that the competence of the House Select Committee requires the appointment of 13 members. Okay. Yes, the House Select Committee is incompetent, okay, because it's comprised of the people that are on it, but it's also not competent because it's not legally constituted, saying that it needs to have 13 members. Same argument I made. HR 503 says that it's got to have 13 members, 5 of whom needs to be appointed through consultation with the House Minority Leader. Here's the resolution. It's being cited specifically, quote, the Speaker shall appoint 13 members to the committee, 5 of whom shall be appointed after consultation with the Minority Leader. Shall. It's undisputed the Speaker of the House failed to appoint 13 members to the committee, okay? There's not 13 members on there. Now, there's been other arguments here, right? I've said, I've gotten some good emails about this. Well, maybe she consulted with them, but, she sent him a text message. Hey, what do you think I should do? Who do you think I should appoint on these committees positions? And Kevin says, whatever. And she says, I've consulted with you. I don't care about your stupid opinion. Thanks for texting me back, though, because now I've consulted with you. That being said, right, you can take that argument, set that one aside, which I think is a reasonable argument. I think it's incorrect, but it's reasonable. It says it is undisputed that the Speaker of the House failed to appoint 13 members. So even if that's true, right, let's say that this part, the consultation with the Minority Leader, let's say, well, she consulted with them, but, appointed whoever she wants to. That's pretty poor drafting of legislation there, of course, but there still aren't 13 people. There's still only 9 of them on there. So it's not lawfully constituted, okay? And a 13-member body comprised of 8 to 5, if you just do the math on that, it's a lot closer to equal. It's a lot 8 to 8 is a lot closer to, 8 to 5 is a lot closer to equal than 7 to 2. Okay, we're talking about a 3-point spread versus a 5-point spread. It's a big difference. And by the way, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are not even going to be Republicans next year. They're both going to not be in Congress. And if they were actual true Republicans, then they wouldn't be saying the same things. Or let me say this. If there was an actual sort of equally balanced committee with people with differing viewpoints, you'd put Republicans with differing viewpoints on there that would ask opposite questions during these hearings, right? Or maybe offer a different perspective. But it's not, it's one party, it's one narrative, it's one statement. They're all essentially Democrats. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, yes, they're technically Republicans who are not going to get reelected because they're not really Republicans. Or anybody that their constituents want. And so they're going to be gone. All right. So illegally constituted committee, Kevin McCarthy submitted that. Now, Steve Bannon and his defense team on Friday, I think it was, filed a motion. Yeah, on Friday, they filed a notice of the defendant's position regarding that argument. Kevin's argument was illegally constituted. Steve Bannon is now responding, and here's what he had to say about it. So this is 7 pages. We'll go through it relatively quickly. Submitted by his attorney, remember, David Scone, who was a former lawyer for the Trump impeachment proceeding. It says, on May 25th, with the court's permission, Kevin McCarthy filed an amicus brief, and it addresses several different things. But they write, the court has not directed the parties to address the substances of this, so we're not going to do that right now. But I am, Judge, just going to provide notice about our position on this brief. First argument, Mr. Bannon adopts the House Minority Leadership amicus brief insofar as it is not inconsistent with the arguments that he's already made in his motion to dismiss. They say, Your Honor, with this filing, Mr. Bannon gives notice to this court that he adopts the positions that McCarthy put forward. He says Mr. Bannon, of course, vigorously opposes the substantive arguments made in the House's amicus briefs and believes that they are legally unsupportable. However, as noted, the court has not directed briefing by the parties on the substantive positions advanced in the briefs. But he says, however, the House's amicus brief, general counsel for the House, makes factual assertions without any affidavit, declaration, or otherwise. And these factual assertions have no place in this process and should be wholly ignored by the court with no weight whatsoever given to them. Now, I know this is probably a little bit confusing, right? Because we have the House of Representatives and we also have Kevin McCarthy. Okay, so here Bannon is talking about the House and their brief, not Kevin McCarthy's brief. He says, Mr. Bannon expressly lodges his objection to factual assertions that are unsupported. Let's see what else he has. This may be less interesting than I thought. Yeah, so this is not as interesting as I thought, largely because he's not addressing much of the substance here. To the extent House counsel emphasizes throughout his amicus that the court must defer to the House construction, yeah, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's less interesting than I thought. I apologize for it. But basically, this is notice saying he's sort of objecting to the House's amicus brief, and he's adopting some of the minority leadership brief. Okay, so we're going to have to wait until Steve Bannon actually files more of the substantive response. So basically what's happening here is these are being filed, and the court has not instructed them to do really anything. This case has been very, very quiet for quite some time. So let me show you what I mean by that. So here, if we go back, look at all these amicuses that have been filed. We've got several different replies. We've got unopposed motions. And then we've got an amicus here on behalf of a minority leader. Several different errors. Here, motion for leave to file from the United States House of Representatives. So we've got 2 different House documents that have been filed. Both those took place on May 25th, and we've got nothing ever since then. Okay, so we're coming up on several weeks ever since that date. We've got several transcript entries, but these are old transcripts. These are from proceedings that took place on March 16th, so they're old. In other words, the judge has not issued any rulings yet on anything. And so what they're saying is they're just filing their notice on the position of these amicus briefs, but they're not getting into the substance of those amicus briefs because the judge has not allowed them to get into the substance of the amicus briefs because he hasn't made any rulings on anything yet. So I thought that was going to be a little bit more interesting, but it's not, unfortunately. But it will be because trial is coming up. I'm sort of chomping at the bit to see when we start getting some more activity in the Bannon case because we're coming up. We're still at about 5 weeks out. Remember on the Sussman trial that things really started to get sort of spicy in the last 3 to 4 weeks, but that was a bigger trial. There was a lot more activity there, a lot of witnesses, and a lot of sort of different items to unpack. And the Steve Bannon case and the Peter Navarro case, they're really just not. I mean, these are like 2 criminal charges. Both of them are contempt of Congress for not showing up and providing testimony, and then contempt of for not providing documents. So it's pretty simple. It's like, did you show up on these dates? Yes or no? No? All right. And they're going to have to present all of that to the DC jurors, who, of course, will vote accordingly on the jury panels. And so that, my friends, is what I wanted to get to and cover today, which means we're basically caught up on a lot of the J6 stuff. Remember, we're going to have a full week of it next week. I'm going to start, if you're following along at home at j6mindmap.com, I'm going to start fleshing out some of these arguments a little bit. We now know what the 6 series arc looks like. And as would normally happen in any actual criminal proceeding, you normally get a list of witnesses and a list of discovery, and you'd sort of get a schedule, and you know when things are coming, and you could prepare for it. But this isn't like that at all. This is a show. It's a spectacle. It's a high school pep rally for Democrats, and they're going to just keep really talking about a lot of the same things that we've covered here ad nauseum, but they're going to do it with a little bit more structure this time, and we'll be able to follow along and rebut them every step of the way, because a lot of these arguments are on the back of political fiction. They're creating a narrative here to serve their political ends rather than creating a narrative that is reflective of reality. They want you to think this whole thing was, almost the end of America, and that every single Republican is complicit in it, and so on and so forth. And we're not going to allow that to happen, okay? Because this is America. It's not how things work here. So we'll follow along on all of that, and I hope you join us on that journey. I know a lot of other YouTubers are going to be streaming this stuff, so I'll appreciate you joining us. But I want to spend a quick minute with you and say thank you to those of you who are constantly supporting the work with those super chats, with those memberships, by joining us over on Locals or here on YouTube, and see what you have to say about all of this and more. Let's see. I saw a couple come in today. Here, let me start over on Locals today, because there's a perfectly good meme here that came out from Jeremy. Here's Jeremy saying, FedEx, when it absolutely, positively has to be there overnight. FedEx, there it is. And there's FedEx in 3 different frames, several times the night before, saying we have to go into the Capitol tomorrow. We got to go into the Capitol. There he is, whispering into Ryan Samsel's ears right there before he starts aggravating the crowd, before he saves Officer Edwards from her trip and fall. FedEx, beautiful. That one came in from JC the Music Man. We had another one from Jeff Rook. Jeff says, MSNBC posted a video covering, quote, Trump's secret plot. And the comments went from quotes about tyrannical lies to just a battle over who could comment the dumbest quote. 3 picks. This gives me hope. Okay, so this was over on YouTube. Trump's secret plot exposed. All right, almost 1 million views. Must be from MSNBC's channel. It says, so the answer to the question is, do they really think we're stupid enough to believe this? Is a resounding yes. Wow. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Aldous Huxley, the first clue we are living in a tyrannical dystopian society is when there's a 2-tiered legal system. Stay strapped or get clapped from George Washington. Maybe. He's going to win no matter how much the media is trying to bash him. The root of the problem is collective stupidity, something that can be overcome by showing factual reality. Wow. So that's funny. Interesting comment thread there from Jeff Rook on Locals. Jeremy says, I found this website with a detailed timeline that might be helpful for the reference. Let's take a look at this one from JC the Music Man. Yeah. Oh yeah, this is good. So planning the attack. Yeah. So this is really good. A lot of good images on this. Ellipse Park. Yeah, really good timelines. You know, Wikipedia has a pretty good timeline. I think this might be useful to add to the mind map at some location. Maybe we'll throw that in. We'll just throw that in the baseline here as a note. So let me exit this focus mode. We'll just add that in here, Jeremy, as a comment note, because I think that is a good timeline. Timelines are good, and I think it's, you know, it's important to know what happened, but I still need to know sort of how that implicates every single Republican in America. That was from JC the Music Man here. Ivanka says, to clarify, any charges against Samsel? Yeah, I think he did get charged. I don't remember what it was. Let me take a look. So we could take a look actually on the mind map. We could just go to these prosecutions, take a look at this link, type in Samsel here, and I think he did get charged. Let's see. Yeah, there he is. So forcibly assaulted, resisted, impeded, interfered, obstruction, you know, all the charges. Did he get a seditious conspiracy, though? Let's see. I don't think there's any sedition or conspiracy there or insurrection. Case status, indicted, remains held without bond. That's according to their case status. Yeah. So, yeah, apparently he did. He did get charged. Ray Epps, though, didn't. Ray Epps did not. Yeah, the guy next to him did not. Interesting. Very, very interesting, isn't it? All right, so that was from Vientica's former LEO says, Rob, just wait until the first trial when all the participants are under oath and they're going to be exposed to an unfriendly cross-examination and have to face impeachment. Well, the problem is that they actually might secure convictions, you know. But yeah, the defense would have the opportunity to cross-examine them, no doubt. Whatever the outcome of the trials is going to be decided by a D.C. judge and a D.C. jury. You beat me to it, former LEO. Exactly right. It's not good. We saw what happened in Sussman. The jurors didn't even care. They said there are bigger things to worry about than lying to the FBI. Ridiculous. Here, Facts Matter says, thank you for your awesomeness every freaking single day. Well, not yesterday. I didn't put anything out yesterday. I felt a little badly about it, but you know, it's good to sometimes take a break a little bit. I was grinding on all cylinders and I couldn't even think clearly. And the last thing I wanted to do was come on here and waste your time by slurring myself out of a sort of a sleepy slumber because I couldn't think straight. But we're back here and, you know, we're ready to go and we're going to keep going until we get justice in America, as far as I'm concerned. We have Radice says, hey, Rob, you mentioned my brothers. Could you mention my brother's GoFundMe page? Augie's cancer battle. We were positive on this outcome, but money is tight since he isn't able to work. Thanks a ton, Kathy Radice. Yes, of course. My goodness, of course. Let's pull it up here and encourage you to go there while we're at it. Here, let's see. Augie's cancer battle. Oh, my name is Augie, and I apologize if I'm getting that name wrong. Hairy cell leukemia wasn't the diagnosis I was expecting. It's the diagnosis my family expected. Hospital bed for an entire week. Just one more test. Rare type of cancer. Yes. Okay. So here it is. GoFundMe. If you just go to GoFundMe.com and type in Augie's cancer battle, created 3 days ago from Radice over on our locals community, who's been around our locals community for a long time, since the beginning. So I trust Radice and, you know, this cause, and I will send my thoughts and of course my prayers for Augie. You know, my mother's a breast cancer survivor and a lung cancer survivor. My mother just had a really bad bout of lung cancer. Had half her lung removed this last summer. You know, I didn't even really talk about it here. So my family, you know, has experience with this, and my point, I guess, in sharing that with you is that she's still with us and she's doing great. So I'm sure that outcome is going to be Augie's as well, and we'll support you. GoFundMe, Augie's donation page. That's from Radice. Thank you, Radice. TOS Forever says, hey, afternoon. It's rainy here in West Virginia. Sun is starting to come out due to all the vloggers. I'm listening to Epoch Rumble here. I'm hopeful. I'm still skeptical that the elections may be problematic. We've got illegal immigration and cartel problems across the border. It says, I was concerned about the voting machines, which is so is CISA, actually. But there are people taking action. Some have already been removed. I'm praying enough are removed to solve our problems in real time. That was from TOS Forever. And our amazing locals community, if you want to sign up there, it's watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I'm grateful for everybody over there. There's also, let's see, they're also chatting away. JC, the Music Man, Radicy, and others. And so they're chatting. Okay, and so let me say some shout outs to some of the super chats that came in. Thank you, everybody on YouTube as well. We saw earlier Mark Owens, who's become a member for 4 months. And I'm grateful for that, Mark. Thanks for being a part of our community. The Apocalypsis is here. Says, Oath Keepers told me about weapons stored and that they were for emergency use because Bowser blocked the National Guard. I wrote a song called The Huntsman about J6 Committee's crimes against us video on my channel. Check that out. Cool. So that's from the Apocalypse. So let me pull that one up again. Take a look at that name. The Apocalypsis is on YouTube. Wrote a song about J6 Committee called The Huntsman. So go check him out on YouTube, or them out. And thanks for the support here, The Apocalypse. I got to be careful with some of these names. G.I. Sasich. Somebody got me on one of these. I don't know if that got me. I don't know, but somebody got me on one of these once. Keep up the good work. I can't trust the mainstream media. Why can't anyone figure out Ray Epps? Well, they know who Ray Epps is. The January 6th Select Committee, and they interviewed him. They did a deposition with him. They know who he is. They put him on the watch list, the FBI's most wanted watch list. But then they didn't charge him with anything. Why is that? Thank you for that, GI. I appreciate it. Here, this one came in from Juana. Says, have you reviewed the Capitol PD DOJ internal docs re-January 6 on the Judicial Watch website? A must read, y'all. So let's see. So Judicial Watch, I do follow them on Twitter, but I think it's judicialwatch.org. Let's pull that up. Let's see what they've got over here. Here it is, weekly updates. They have so much stuff. I mean, Tom Fitton over there is just, they're always filing FOIA requests, and they've got a lot of, I don't even know where to go. Look at all this stuff. My goodness. He's just throwing elbows all over the place. Peaceful political elbows, and that's just, love it. DOJ, Judicial Watch lawsuit forces release of the DOJ memo, criminal prosecution for Ashley Babbitt. Yeah, look, we don't have Ashley Babbitt on the mind map. We don't have Roseanne Boyland on the mind map. I mean, there's been other people who there is so much to this thing that, honestly, we're just basically getting started here. So thank you for that. That one came in from Juana. I'm not sure what you're referencing, Juana, but that is, there's a lot there at Judicial Watch. Lori Hayes says, keep showing the truth. This J6 committee is a disgrace. And that is absolutely true. It is absolutely true. It makes my blood boil that we're allowing this to happen, that we have an entire executive branch and mainstream media that are just like, well, I guess Kevin McCarthy, he is a Republican after all. And so subpoenas to him and any other Republicans who were involved is worth it, because we're going to have a stronger, more democratic America. We have to wreck democracy in order to protect the democracy. We have to create fake show trial committees in order to make sure that we preserve America. Okay, whatever. I don't believe it for a minute. Thank you, Lori Hayes, for supporting our work. Mark Owens, also with the Super Chat, a member for 3 months, and also supporting here with Super Chats. Thank you, Mark. Firm handshakes. That's what he says. Which is true. Tells you a lot about a person, doesn't it? Sheila Myers with a Super Chat, no question, but thank you, Sheila. I appreciate that a lot. And Barbara Davino, same thing, Barbara, and I appreciate you too for sending those in. Isaac Bowles with the last one coming in for the day says, while the rest of the so-called law tube figs cover culture like Johnny versus Heard, my man Robert covers politically important cases. Isaac Bowles is here supporting that. That's true. I had a good conversation with Good Logic Joe Neerman. I do a group coaching call with some other lawyers twice a month, and I'm going to share more about that because I'm working on a webinar for that. But I was talking with him, and we were just sort of just chit-chatting. He came by just to kind of shoot the breeze a little bit. It was Friday, and we were talking about it, man. LawTube is like sort of turned into a big thing, and it's really interesting. It's exciting. It's, a little bit, let's just say it's interesting. Yeah, it's see how it's morphed in all these different ways. And so it's been fun to sort of see it grow. I know that there was a lot of activity on the Hollywood trial. Of course, we missed basically all of that. And so honestly, I feel a little bit unplugged from everybody. Like I feel sort of like that weird kid at the high school prom. Like everybody's dancing around, having a good time, spending time covering Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And like we're that weird group of people. Like we're those like weird kids in the corner. We're like losers. Don't they know how important Michael Sussman is? And they're all having a good time. I mean, maybe that's how I feel, but actually, I actually don't feel bad about it at all. I actually think that we were having the real party, quite frankly, which is how I felt in high school when I was over there in the corner. So, and it's really, I think, well, we'll just leave it at that. I think what's happening with LawTube is very cool. I think that a rising tide lifts all boats. The more people that are interested in the law, in whatever way, shape, or form. I know sometimes I threw shade at Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and all that, but I really think that if more people are coming to YouTube to learn about the law, that's good for everybody, right? We want more people going away from the mainstream media, away from the big conglomerates, getting all of their stuff pre-filtered. More people coming to independent media, the better. If it's Johnny Depp or Michael Sussman or any of these other, yeah, like I'd prefer it to be Michael Sussman. Sure. Yeah. I'd love to have, what did Emily Baker have? Like 300,000 people live? Insane. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to have that for Michael Sussman, but it's Michael Sussman. So why would 300,000 people watch that at all? They never would. But like I said, like it's a good thing that more people are saying, let's go to YouTube to get some legal information. So that's all cool. But Isaac Bowles, I'm grateful for you and for the people who would rather be here than the Hollywood stuff, right? We're doing, I think, important work here. And I'm glad that our attention is here on the stuff that matters. I think that attention is a very, 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 very important commodity these days. It's almost like, oil and gas. It's almost like property, right? Attention is what everybody's fighting for. And so we can govern ourselves largely by how we direct our attention. If we direct our attention to more purposeful things, more meaningful things that are in alignment with what we want to see in this country, and things that we can learn from and demand accountability and engage in civic life a little bit so that our knowledge can translate into dinner table conversations, and those dinner table conversations maybe translate into the ballots, right? This is a civic conversation that we're having. And I think as long as that's happening, in whatever way, shape, or form, and if that's happening with Hollywood and that translates over into maybe some civic virtue somewhere else, that's fine too. But I do think this stuff is important because the conversation needs to be had. I'm reading an autobiography on Benjamin Franklin, and he was a printer, and I sort of am comparing and contrasting a lot of the stuff that he did with a lot of the stuff that happens today, because he had sort of like a blog. I mean, he had these blogs. He write these pieces, but they were kind of like blogs out there, and he was influencing the sort of the future of America by having not him, but sort of by hosting the conversations, by hosting the dialogue in the early, founding era of this country. And I think that more of that would be good. Less distraction, more conversations about the civic activity that's happening around us. And we can have fun. We can make it entertaining. We can goof around with this stuff. It doesn't have to be a serious, drab conversation. We can have a lot of fun with it, but it is important. And I think that it's a little bit, more sort of impactful because it translates to real world outcomes and consequences that translate to people's lives. So I'm grateful that you're here, Isaac, and everybody else who joins us in this journey, because really that's what we're doing. We're trying to have a conversation, and we're trying to shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability, transparency, and justice down upon our system with the hope of encouraging change. And so it looks like that is it, my friends, for us for the day. I think we're caught up. And I want to thank you for being a part of the show. It is Saturday, and so I will let you get back to your amazing weekends. I have another entire mind map that I've already created for Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi and that DUI. So we may talk about that maybe tomorrow, or I may do a pre-record video on that. I have a Nancy Pelosi short coming out as well. The Paul Pelosi DUI saga. They haven't decided if they're going to file charges yet, because it's really complicated when you're a powerful person. You and I would be charged immediately, but anybody else, Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, they get a separate system. Anybody else, convicted. So you know how this goes. Anyways, my friend, that is it. I hope that you have an amazing night ahead planned, and you're spending it, unplugging from politics, recharging those batteries, spending it with friends and family, meditating, listening to a mantra, aligning your chakra with the energy frequencies of the universe, and getting some rest and relaxation, because we're going to be back here to do all of this again on the next one. And I look forward to seeing you there. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.